What's going on? Welcome to Spenny and the Nets, a Brooklyn Nets podcast hosted by yours truly, me. I'm Spen Harris. My co-host Nick is not with us today. He's missing the episode for whatever excuse he gave me for not being able to make it. But it's just me, and we got a lot to talk about with this Brooklyn Nets team coming off a historic loss last night against the Clippers. We'll get into that shortly. But to start, I want to talk about the overall mood of this fan base, what it is, what it should be, where we are in terms of being successful. We're far from it. This Nets team, we're in a tank right now. It's obvious. This team is tanking. We've talked about it on a ton of shows before this. But we are actively going out there and more times than not trying to lose ball games. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this is good. If we stink this year and we get a pick in the lottery, we can potentially change the outcome of this team's future by getting a superstar like a Cooper Flag, like an Ace Bailey, like a Dylan Harper. Any of these guys you hear about that are killing it in college basketball, the Nets could potentially land by tanking. But there are a lot of downsides to tanking. All right? For starters, as a fan, it sucks to watch your team actively try and lose ball games. Now, obviously, if the fan base is bought into the tank, which the majority of Nets fans that I've spoken with are bought in, Nets fans, for the most part, want to lose and lose heavy for the rest of the year. But fans still have to pay to go to games. So if a fan knows that their team's tanking, they're less likely to pay for those tickets. So that's not the best in terms of the team making money and generating revenue and profits for guys going to the ball game. But what a tank can do internally with a team is it can be a disconnect between the players and the front office and the coaches. So that's what I've personally noticed as we've gone through this experience with the Nets so far. The front office wants the team to lose, right? Sean Marks wants a high draft pick. He wants one of these generational talents coming out of college, and he wants to put the Nets in the best position to get that pick. So the front office wants us to lose. But Jordi Fernandez is a first-year coach. He's trying to prove that he belongs in the NBA. So he is coaching to win basketball games. The Nets have players that have to play in the games. Saw what happened to Jonte Porter. You can't try to to not score, to lose games. You can't do that. You have to play, and also you're playing for a contract. So the players are going to play to win the games. And that's you've seen this disconnect where Sean Marks has made hints to the media about, hey, maybe winning games isn't in the best interest of the team long term, so we're gonna put this team in position to do what they need to do. Lose, right? You guys remember that line from Rosie Perez in White Man Can't Jump when she's trying to get through to Woody Harrelson's character, and she says, sometimes when you win, you really lose. Sometimes when you lose, you really win. And sometimes when you draw, you really win or lose. It's malarkey, but in the sense of the Nets and what they're doing this year, yeah, sometimes when you lose, you really win if you're the fan base, if you're Sean Marks. Now, the disconnect I was talking about with the players, guys like Cam Johnson, guys like D'Angelo Russell, these are well-established players in the league who there's a certain pride that they wear when they go out on the court every single game. They're going to put up buckets. They're going to do what they need to do to get paid. And that's what you saw. We're going to go over the games individually in a bit, but that's what you saw against the Jazz. Against the Trailblazers a few nights ago. A healthy Cam Johnson, healthy D'Angelo Russell, healthy Ben Simmons. These guys come back. All of a sudden, you win a game against one of the worst teams in the league, the Blazers, who right now are in a better position to get a higher pick than the Brooklyn Nets. So it becomes this game of chess where the players are playing to win, the front office is managing to lose, and then the coach is somewhere stuck in the middle. And that's what I see in terms of the cons of the tank. Now, I started this by talking about the overall fan base mood, right? The mood of our fan base. We are actively rooting for this Nets team to lose in the majority of games they play. There's no if, ands, or buts around it. When the Nets win and they beat a team like the Blazers, we have a worse chance at getting a generational talent next year. And obviously, it feels nice to win a game or two, but at what expense? At what cost, right? Who do we not want to be in the NBA? We do not want to be the Chicago Bulls. They sit from 6 to 10 every single year. They have, middle of the first round pick, and nothing ever changes. They're stuck in NBA limbo. The Brooklyn Nets do not want to be stuck in NBA limbo. We've seen this team at the top, what that potentially looked like with the big three. And back in the day with the J. Kidd, Kenyon Martin, Vince Carter days, that team went to the finals. They were a perennial playoff contender. And we've seen this team be really low. Around the move, a little bit before the move to Brooklyn, they were terrible. And then, a few years shortly after the Paul Pierce, Joe Johnson, Kevin Garnett, Darren Williams teams, they were terrible. But we don't want to be in limbo. And that, I think, for a fan base that has gone through the ringer, that's what we're hoping for. We're hoping that we can get a pick and we're not going to be one of these teams like the Bulls, or even I look at the Charlotte Hornets and see how they haven't been able to build through the draft. And yeah, they have a young talent, LaMelo Ball, but outside of him, there's no real core. There's no real foundation in Charlotte. And in Chicago, it's just not good enough. So, yeah, these are tough times to be a Nets fan. I still watch every single game, me personally, and it's weird. I mean, I'm not speaking about the entire fan base now. I'm just talking about my personal experiences. I still want the team to win. I still want the team to play hard because I think losing night in and night out, that creates a really bad culture. And it creates a really bad mentality around the team, and guys will start to point fingers and get mad. And I still like to watch this team win. At the same time, I understand losing is for the betterment of the future, and I'm okay with it. I'm not upset when the Nets lose, 4 of the last 5 games. But it's such a mental conundrum that Nets fans are in watching this team. It's weird. I've never, I've been watching, I'm a huge Giants fan, and obviously watching them this year, it's not like they were actively trying to lose games. They just fucking sucked, and that was a totally different story. But yeah, at the end, when they get that win against the Colts and you lose the chance to draft number 1, it's a shitty feeling. But at the same time, it was cool to watch the Giants win a game. It was cool to watch the offense pop off for 1 out of the 17 weeks of the season. So I digress. Just odd times to be a Nets fan right now. All right, so we had 5 games since our last podcast. I wasn't going to break them down fully, but I wanted to go over each game, starting with the 59-point loss in Los Angeles against the Clippers in the Inuit Dome. A lot of things from this game that were very just, if you can't cry about it, you got to laugh about it, right? James Harden looked surgical. From the moment the ball tipped off, he was absolutely every pass, alley-oop, you name it, step back 3. It was almost like there were cones out there. He made the game look so simple and easy last night. And his running mate, Kawhi Leonard, who I think yesterday was his 4th game of the season, Kawhi's looked the best that he looked in years last night. I think he finished with 23. Even though it wasn't a game, I mean, they absolutely blew us out by halftime. This game was over. He looked really sharp. And again, made Nets defenders look like cones for the majority of his time. Noah Clowney was ejected. That was weird. Game's pretty much over. He gets hit in the head, doesn't get the foul call. He goes goes a little nuts and gets ejected from the game. And we can't talk about this game without talking about Nick Claxton, who has just not been the same Nick Claxton we're used to this year, which ironically has everyone rooting for the tank pumped because he has been the main tank commander in charge. He had just an abysmal shacking moment last night. He misses the reverse dunk, which essentially Zubats gives him, misses that, and then botches 2 layups right after that. You're going to see that on Not Top 10 on Friday. That could be number 1, but probably be top 5. That was fucked up, to watch a guy who's been struggling all season continue to struggle specifically in that moment. And then, the viral moment that I saw the day after was there were injured players like Cam Johnson, who was sitting the second half of a back-to-back. Ben Simmons, the same deal. Bojan Bogdanovic. They were in the first row. And then guys who were actively in the game, and Reese Beekman and Dariq Whitehead, who were playing, they were relegated to the second row. And I saw Legions Hoops and a few other accounts caught that image. That was very interesting. Like, why are those guys? Bojan Bogdanovic has not played a single moment for the Nets. How is he getting a priority seating over guys like Dariq Whitehead and Reese Beekman? I didn't quite understand that. Looking at this game by the numbers, 67 points scored by the Nets. I think it's the second fewest since 2016. 30% from the field in total, field goal percentage. 18% from 3. And then this one, like, you're just piling it on, 54% from the free throw line. Awful game for the Nets. But at the same time, round of applause for the tank. That's how you tank a ball game. No Cam Johnson in this one. No D'Angelo Russell. No Ben Simmons. Trendon Watford, another guy who was in that front row of injured players. He wasn't in this game. You're not going to beat a Los Angeles Clippers team with a roster remotely resembling this. So, that was the game last night. Now we're gonna go all the way back to January 8th. So 8 days ago, Wednesday, Pistons beat the Nets 113-98. What I learned from this game: Pistons are an up-and-coming team. They are who the Nets should want to be in the next few years. True leader in Cade Cunningham. Legitimate player, legitimate number 1 pick. And I was just happy the Pistons beat the Knicks a few nights later. Because, on this podcast, we do not like the Knicks. And the Pistons handled their business at the Garden. Shout out to Cade Cunningham. Shout out to the Pistons. By the way, I saw an interesting stat. The last 4 teams, I guess, to tank are sort of evidence of why you tank, right? Because I think I forget what the exact tweet was. It was like the last 4 out of 5 first pick overalls. It was Anthony Edwards. It was Cade Cunningham. It was Victor Wembanyama. And then there's a few names I'm missing. Last few NBA drafts. Let's see if I can pull this up. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Okay. Victor Wembanyama, Paolo Banchero, Cade Cunningham, Anthony Edwards, and then 2019 was Zion Williamson. So those 5 guys, right? Those are players that make it all the more sense for the Nets to tank. Now, last year, the Hawks got the number 1 pick. They didn't tank. They were a play-in team last year. I also don't think the number 1 pick last year is someone who's going to be a Hall of Famer in the NBA. Zachary Richier. He's had moments for the Hawks. I just don't know if you can compare him to any of those guys like Wemby, like Banchero, like Cunningham, or like Edwards. So just keep that in mind. If you tank and if you get the number 1 pick more times than not, it's going to change the face of your franchise. So yeah, shout out to the Pistons. I like their team. They're young, hungry. Duran's a nice player. They got some serious talent on that Detroit team. Give them 2 to 3 years. They can get another star in there with Cunningham, and they'll be an extremely dangerous team in the East. They're not far off. Real fast, going back to that Clippers game, losing by 59 points, I believe that was the worst loss in franchise history for the Nets. Definitely in Brooklyn. Probably of all time. Okay, let's move on. Going now from January 8th to January 10th, Nets played the Nuggets. This was a loss, 124-105. Denver beats the Nets. Nikola Jokic and Russell Westbrook each had a triple-double in this game. They were pretty dominant from the jump. Who played in this game? So this was a game you did not have D'Angelo Russell, no Cam Johnson. Your high man for the Nets was Keon Johnson with 22 points. Tyrese Martin had 19. He's been a nice story. And yeah, these numbers for Jokic and Westbrook were insane. 35 points, 15 assists, 12 rebounds for Jokic. And then for Westbrook, 25 points, 10 assists, 11 rebounds for Westbrook. Those guys play a very, very pretty style of basketball together. I would like to see them beat the crap out of teams in the West like the Mavericks, like the Phoenix Suns. Yeah. So, shout out to the Nuggets. They beat a Nets team without 3 or 4 of our best players. And I don't believe, did we have Nick Claxton in that game? Yeah, Nick Claxton did play in that game, 27 minutes, 10 points, and 6 rebounds for Clax. Obviously, no Cam Thomas still, so you're playing without 3 of your best scorers. Ben Simmons, 10 points, 7 rebounds in this one. Yeah, just not enough. Keon Johnson being the only guy over 20 points, and Tyrese Martin being the only guy with Johnson over 15 points, not good enough. 14 points for Noah Clowney in 14 minutes in that one. Then we had probably the most interesting game of the schedule against the Jazz. This is a team trying to tank as well. Nets had a chance to win this game in regulation. Nick Claxton blew an alley-oop attempt. Then the Jazz in overtime win it on an Isaiah Collier game-winning layup. He had 23 points. Colin Sexton had 21 points for the Jazz. Just a very interesting ball game. Collier had a ridiculous 8-second call in towards the end of the fourth, and him and Sexton went at it on the sideline. I'll say this about Colin Sexton. Guy loves to shoot. He would make sense as a sixth man on a contender that needed a scorer in their second unit. I like his game, but I feel like every time that guy touches the ball, he's looking to score. He's not looking to pass it up. So, yeah. Great loss for the Nets. Why is this a great loss? Jazz get a win, Nets get a loss. You get a little bit closer to that lottery pick that you so desperately desire. Overall good loss. If you're the Nets, you figured out a way to not let a team like the Jazz beat you. Now, very next game, we play the Trailblazers, and this game was on Tuesday, January 14th. And I'm sorry, the score of that Jazz game was 112-111. The Jazz win. Nets Trailblazers. Nets 132, Trailblazers 114. Why did the Nets win this game? Cam Johnson, D'Angelo Russell played. When those guys play, if they play against the dreads of the NBA, more likely than not, we're going to win ball games. Okay? 24 points for Cam Johnson. He was just unbelievable in this one. D'Angelo Russell had 13 points and 9 assists in 21 minutes. So he was on limited action. He was on a minutes restriction, still was able to produce, still was able to play excellent. And then Ben Simmons with 11 assists, 9 rebounds, and 5 points. This Blazers team is god-awful. I mean, shout out to Scoot Henderson. He went off 39 points. That's going to be a blip on the radar for him because he's not like that, 39 points in 39 minutes. But nobody else did anything in this game. Kamara had 23, Shaedon Sharpe had 21, but Anthony Simons, 11 points for him is a bad game. And then DeAndre Ayton, 2 points, 8 rebounds in 24 minutes. He might not be on an NBA roster in about a year. Some of the effort plays that he just doesn't give, they got to kill you if you're a fan of not only the Blazers, just a fan of the NBA. If you go back and watch some clips from that Blazers-Nets game, there are moments where he's just standing there giving up buckets, not getting involved on offense, not getting involved on defense, just terrible. And then outside of the guys for the Nets that I mentioned, Cam Johnson, D'Lo, Ben Simmons, everybody on the Nets had a good game. Keon Johnson had 20 points. Jalen Wilson had 14 off the bench. Tosan Ebua, I've been working on saying his name. Ebua, he had 10 points, 4 rebounds. He's been a nice player for the Nets. Really like his game. Zaire Williams had 13 points, 7 rebounds. And Tyrese Martin had 5 points in 20 minutes. Day'Ron Sharpe had 8.7 rebounds. So, yeah, everyone who played in this game contributed. The Nets really just dominated Portland in that second half. And, I don't want to say you hate to see it, because as a fan, I like to watch them win. It was fun to watch this team play well, have some chemistry for a change. But yeah, you do not want to beat a team like the Blazers, who now have a better chance of getting an Ace Bailey, getting a Cooper Flag. Now they have a better chance than you do because they beat you in the head-to-head. So yeah, that about does it for the last 5 games. The Nets were 1-4, obviously good for the tank. And here we go. So I have a comment. Paulo writes, sorry I'm late. Not sure if it was addressed, but 67 points against the Clips last night is the largest loss in franchise history. What positives, if any, can the Nets come out of that game with? My response to you, Paulo, is you have to learn how to lose before you can win. And this Nets team is in the process of learning how to lose. Was this LA going through a natural disaster, let's give it to them type game? Are games like this good for the sport? So, no, I don't think that the Nets gave the Clippers this game because they're going through a natural disaster. Obviously, it's always nice when, a city is able to get some type of relief in the form of sports, which obviously doesn't replace the people who have lost their homes and the families who have lost their homes and the people who have lost their lives. Obviously, that's horrible. But as life goes on, what do we turn to kind of deal with some of the emotions and some of the anger and some of the sadness? We turn to sports. So shout out to Clippers fans who were able to get a little bit of relief in this just dominating performance from them. Are games like this good for the sport? No, I don't think blowout games are good for any sport, but they're necessary. Like you need them. The Clippers needed to have this win, and the Nets, in some kind of ways, they needed to have this loss. So not good for the sport, but individually can be good for both teams involved. All right. I thought this was very interesting. I wanted to bring it up on the podcast. This could be a potential reunion down the line in Brooklyn. So check this out. Former Brooklyn Net Kevin Durant talked about his time with the Nets. Here's what he said.
I liked it out there.
Here we go.
Brooklyn was fucking with me for sure. Yeah, I liked it out there.
The world thought that was the wave right there. Y'all
loved it out there.
3 prolific scores.
It looked good too. Yeah. It looked great. We just couldn't get on the court together. Injuries, COVID, all that stuff played a factor. But when when you turn on that film and watch this on the court together, it was some shit you can teach a team. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We put some good stuff on film.
He loved it in Brooklyn. He was fucking with. We were fucking with him. He was fucking with us. That was Kevin Durant in Brooklyn. Who's not to say he might not come back? Nets Twitter was on fire after that clip came out, talking about a potential reunion, talking about, Kevin Durant potentially maybe finishing out his career in Brooklyn. Now you got to look at this in another way as well. When he was in Brooklyn, he was applauding teams like the Phoenix Suns, where he ended up. So is it one of those, you don't know what you have until it's gone type of comments? Or does he just have kind of a pattern of speaking highly of past organizations and past employers, but not necessarily with the intent of returning? I'd like to think it's the former. I'd like to think one day Kevin Durant will come back. Maybe he can play with the young talent on this team. But I would never want to mortgage any sort of young potential that we're going to draft in the next few years for a Kevin Durant. That would not make any sense. Paulo Bengzon writes, how can you believe this nonsense? He was playing with his best friend in Kyrie and literally requested a trade. I get it. The circumstances were different at the time. I understand why he requested the trade. He didn't see the path to success if he stayed in Brooklyn. But at the same time, I think he liked the fan base. I think he fucked hard with the fan base, as he mentioned in the clip. And Brooklyn loved him. We really did. Like, out of all the guys after J. Kidd to ever come close, I think Kevin Durant might have been the next most loved net in terms of production, in terms of winning, in terms of all that. He beats any net from those 2012, 2013 teams. He was better than those guys. Yeah. I take him over Vince Carter, not in terms of longevity, but just in terms of you felt like he gave us more of a chance to win than Vince Carter did in the East. So, and that's actually a pretty funny segue into this next segment, honoring a Nets legend. So Anthony Puccio at @apooch shared that, and he tweeted this on Saturday, January 24th. The Empire State Building will honor Vince Carter's jersey retirement by lighting the Nets' historic red, white, and blue color scheme with the number 15 rotating on the spire. Vince Carter is getting celebrated by the Empire State Building as the Brooklyn Nets retire his jersey. You gotta love it. You gotta love Vinsanity. Some of the most exciting basketball I've ever watched in person was Jason Kidd and Vince Carter playing together. You will never see alley-oops like that ever again. Ever. 100% deserves to have his jersey retired. One of the most electrifying athletes to ever play the sport of basketball. The greatest dunker to ever play in the NBA. Vince Carter. And what I love about this is, obviously the Nets play in Brooklyn. The Empire State Building is in New York City. But who gets to see these colors shine so brightly? The guys from New Jersey who watched Vince Carter play at the Meadowlands, at MetLife Arena. I'm sorry, not MetLife Arena. At Continental Arena, the Izod Center, whatever it was called. The guys in Jersey get to watch that Empire State Building light up with the Vince Carter colors. You love it. Rightfully earned, rightfully deserved. Still not going to say he was a better basketball player than Kevin Durant. Still not going to say he put the Nets in a better position to win than Kevin Durant. But represented some of the most electrifying, exciting basketball that Nets fans ever had the privilege of watching. So shout out to Vince Carter, honoring a Nets legend. All right. That does it for this week's episode. Thanks to everyone who joined. Thanks to Paulo for commenting later in the show. We really appreciate the questions. This has been episode 212 of Spenny and the Nets. And hopefully next week we'll have a guest or a co-host. Or not. You never know. Go Nets.